morning I'm going to be in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8, starting with verse number 5, says, "And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. I say to this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doth it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into the outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour." Just the sake of knowing what a centurion was a ranked officer in the Roman occupation force. In today's time, that's roughly equivalent to a sergeant major. So he had ranking, he had people that worked under him. He was ranked highly among the Roman soldiers. And this Roman officer, he came to Jesus for the healing of his servant. And Jesus told him that he would come and heal his servant, a Roman soldier. And he told him, yes, I will come and heal your servant. But what got me was that the Roman soldier come to Jesus knowing that that was the only hope that he had for his servant to be healed. Amen. That centurion was humble. He knew that he was not worthy to have Jesus come into his house to heal his servant. He answered and said, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof. He was humble. He didn't expect it. He did not feel, he was not like we are today. He didn't feel entitled and like that Jesus should drop everything and run to his house and heal his servant, to take care of his problems. He knew he wasn't worthy of that. And unfortunately, a lot of times we act like, if there's something going on in our lives, we act like we feel Jesus should just forget about everything else in the world that's going on and focus only on our problems, only on what we want at that time. We need to have the humbleness that Roman soldier had. We need to understand that we're not worthy to have Jesus do one thing for us. We don't deserve one thing he does for us. We've got to get to a place where we're humble enough that we can recognize that, because once we humble ourselves to that point, how much sweeter does that make everything the Lord does for us? How much more does it mean to us when we take the time to realize that we don't deserve it, that we're not entitled to one thing? But this centurion, he also had amazing faith. He knew that Jesus didn't have to come to his house and lay hands on his servant. He didn't have to come and perform no kind of ceremony. He didn't have to come and give him no kind of medicine, do nothing. He knew that all Jesus had to do was speak it, and it would be. He knew all it took was for Jesus to say, "Be healed," and his servant would be healed. Why do we not have faith like that? Why do we want to question every single thing? We're always, why? Why, Lord, did you do this? Why didn't you do this, Lord? How could you allow that to happen, God? When are you going to do this for me? When are you going to take care of this for me? Why is this happening? Why is this going on in my life? And that list goes on and on and on. With us always questioning God about why things aren't going exactly how we feel like they should go. Why we're not seeing the results that we feel like we should be seeing. Does that sound like any of us in here today? We're all guilty of it, whether we admit it or not. We're all guilty of it. I'm probably the worst one in here. I know. It's our flesh. We question things. We want stuff our way. But we should know. We should believe. We should have the faith that God has a plan for everything and that everything is under God's control. We should want that when God looks at us, that he would say, just like he said here, "Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith. No, not in Israel." He basically said, in other words, I have not found someone else with so much faith. That's how we should want God to feel when he looks at us. We should want him to be able to look at us and say, "Wow, look at the faith they have. Look how much they trust in me. They believe in me. They know I'm going to take care of them." We should never want God to look at us and say, "Why do they not have faith in me? Why do they not believe and know that I'm going to take care of them? Why do they not believe that I know what's best for them, that I'm going to be there for them?" And our lack of faith puts us in that category of why do they not believe? Why do they not have faith? God is the only place that we should put our trust and faith, And we should give our trust and our faith to God 100% of the time in everything that's going on in our lives. No matter how big it is or how small it may seem, our trust, our faith, our belief should be in God.
Sure.
Wonder if anyone might have a word for the Lord this morning.
I can't help but think of what the really messed up part of that story might have been, is that there's a pretty good chance that centurion's soldiers ended up being the ones who crucified Jesus. I just couldn't help but think that as you were telling that story.
It's very possible it could have been. We don't know. But
I thank Jesus for working us surgery. You know what I mean?
amen.
I was thinking the same thing Philip said the whole time you were talking.
Oh, yeah. We don't know, but there's a very good chance it could have been.
Well, at the cross, there was a man, and he was a centurion.
Amen.
As soon as
very possible it could have been the exact same one. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't recognize that power.
Sure.
Man. Nobody else has anything, we'll dismiss to our classes.
I'm praying for you, Katie.
Susan, do you get it?
She's doing a whole lot better. Get her heart under control.
Morning. How is everybody?
Good. Blessed.
Blessed, blessed, blessed. That's what we all ought to be able to say, shouldn't we? Doug Jones, you pray for us this morning.
Father, we thank you, Lord, for this time we have here together. Thank you for the fellowship, Lord. We thank you, God, for all of our teachers. Lord, thank you for a place to come together here, Lord, to learn more of you. We ask, Lord, that your anointing be on every teacher here this morning. Lord, that you would give us an ear to hear, Lord, what you have us to hear. Bless Kevin as he brings this lesson. Lord, just bless our time here together. In your name we pray. Amen.
When I ask people a lot of the time how they're doing, I love it when they say that they're blessed. Raise your hand if you're blessed this morning. Everybody in here. That's the way it should be. Go ahead and turn over to Genesis chapter number 32. I guess that's where we'll start this morning. I'm going to talk to you this morning about your blessings. While you're turning there, I'm going to read you the first verse in chapter 24. It says, "And Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things." And in my Bible, I underlined the words, "in all things." Now, raise your hand if you can say, God has blessed me in just about every area of my life. Good. We know that Abraham was blessed because of his faith, and that it carried on through the generations, generational blessing. We know that it went through Isaac, and then down to, ended up being Jacob. But like James was talking about this morning, Esau was the one that was entitled to the blessing. the oldest son was always the one that the father pronounced the blessing on as he got old and was ready to die. Now Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things in his life. Everything that Abraham touched, God blessed. And we can study it out. It went through Isaac. And we have record that Isaac was blessed the same way that Abraham was. Now we know the story. We know that Jacob stole the blessing. I got some verses right there I want to read you this morning. We know that Isaac had got old and that Rebekah had come up with a plan to cause Jacob to get the blessing instead of Esau. And Esau went out to hunt. And while he was gone, Rebekah had Jacob kill a goat. And she cooked the meat and dressed Jacob up like Esau. And Jacob, of course, wanted to be blessed. He wanted this blessing. He wanted it bad enough to steal it. He understood the power of the blessing that his father was going to speak. Had he spoke the blessing on Esau, Esau would have got the blessing. But we're going to see here how God works things out. Now, if you read this, there's some verses, I didn't look it up, but I'm going to tell you, that says that Esau was a man of the field. And that Jacob was a man that lived in tents. He stayed inside, and I assume he studied books and stuff like that. I don't know what he done, but it says that he was an inside type fellow. Now listen to this. Jacob was somewhat of a con man. He was a crook. We've talked about that before. And this is when he's going in there to where Isaac is getting ready to die. Now this is 27, verse 22. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and felt him, and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are of Esau, because he had covered his hands in the goat's fur. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy, as his brother's Esau's hands. So he blessed him. And he said, art thou my son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, bring it near to me, that I will eat my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, and he did eat. And he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, come here now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment. And he blessed him, and he said, I smell the smell of my son, the smell of the field, which the Lord hath blessed. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, and the plenty of corn and wine. Let the people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out of the presence of Isaac, that his father, of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from hunting. Now, Isaac spoke the blessing on Jacob that he should have spoke on Esau. And then Jacob fled to his uncle Laban's country. And he was a crook too. He was a con man. So Jacob knew the power of the blessing. And from that point on in his life, he was blessed. Just like Abraham, everything that he got involved in, God had his hand in, and he multiplied it. Now, he went to live with Laban, and Laban would try to cheat him. Now, we know the story of how he ended up with Leah, his first wife, and then he had to work for years to get his other wife. But he was blessed with wives, sons, camels, goats, cattle, all of his life. And I found it interesting that Esau was a man of the field, but Jacob was a man of tents. But when he went to live with Laban, everything that had to do with out in the field God blessed. The goats that Laban would try to cheat him, he'd give him the worst goats, and they would multiply more than the best goats. God chose to give that to Jacob because of the blessing that was spoke on him by his dad. So he was blessed in the area where he had not studied. He had not been a man of the field. Everything that he touched out in the field turned to gold. Now raise your hand if you're blessed. Oh, we ain't got as many now for some reason.
Kevin, it's always told me why God would honor something deceitfully gained.
I've thought a whole lot about that, but God is not a man that he could lie. And God told Abraham it was put in motion to speak the blessing on the oldest son, and God would stand by the blessing. And as long as it was spoke on the oldest son, God would stand by it. When it was spoke, it could not be took back. So, just for example, when Jacob was blessing Joseph's sons, he also put his hand on the youngest son and said, I bless you. And Joseph said, nay, that's not the oldest. This one is. And he said, it is what it is. It's too late. I've already spoke the blessing on him. It's his blessing. But then he spoke another blessing on the other son.
It still happens today, though. The con artists still in the inheritance. I mean, Kelly sees it every day. I mean, it's the same thing still. Trying to steal a blessing that shouldn't be theirs.
That's exactly right. People you've never met can steal everything you've got now.
Kevin, God blessed Jacob in spite of who he was.
That's exactly right.
Same way with me. He blesses me in spite of who I am.
Me too. So the blessing was spoke on Jacob, although it was brought about by deceit, and God stood by the blessing that was put on him. He had wives, he had sons, camels, goats, everything. It gives a list. Everything that he touched was blessed by God. Now, from the outside looking in, I can look at y'all, just about everybody in here, and say, you live a blessed life. I can look at Alan and say, Alan, you're blessed. You've got sons, you've got grandchildren, you're blessed in your life. Sid, you're blessed. Shannon, you're blessed. Philip, Cindy, you're blessed. Eric, you're blessed. Gracie, you're blessed. I can see from the outside looking in that you are blessed, and you are blessed. God has chosen to put his hand in your life and bless it. When you sit here this morning, you look back over your life, you're going to think about it, hopefully, and say, I can see where God blessed this area in my life.
Sure.
And that's what we call counting our blessings. How often do we do that? No, not often enough, do we? God has poured his blessings out in my life. I can't say that I've ever been without. There's been things that I wanted, but there's never been nothing that I needed.
You know, if you needed it, there'd always be somebody there to get it.
That's it. That's it.
Sir, I can say everybody that's breathing, I can count at least $250,000 ways they're blessed.
That's exactly.
I like to say half, but I'm not saying.
Well, just like Tina was talking about the man that's in the hospital this morning. They want the church service sitting down there to them. But even in the hospital, they've been blessed. They've got people here willing to send that church service down there to them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a blessing that's been put in their life. We have to examine our lives and say, this is a blessing in my life. God touched this in my life. He moved in this area of my life. My life is blessed, not because I deserve it, but because God chose to bless me.
Amen.
Now, I can look at you and I can see that, and hopefully you can look at me and say, he's blessed too. We are a blessed people living in a blessed nation. Everybody in here has been blessed. And as I thought about this week, you know, most of us have been blessed to the point where we squander away a lot of our blessings and never even know we have them. I can look back over my life and see where God put something in my life that was a blessing that was more valuable than anything, and I squandered it away. I didn't even know I had it until it was already gone. And that's a shame. But we are to count our blessings. Just like Jacob, we are blessed. We don't deserve it, but we're blessed. So Jacob moves to his uncle's property, and God blesses him. He blesses him more than Laban. He ends up with more stuff than Laban's got. And all of a sudden, somebody tell me what happened.
Esau comes after him.
God speaks to Jacob and says, go back home, where Esau is. So what does this do to Jacob? Now Jacob stole his blessing. Jacob's been living in the land of plenty. He's been living the life that Esau should have had. And God says, go back to where your brother's living. This puts fear in Jacob's soul. Somebody tell me why. He thinks he's going to kill him. Jacob knows that Esau has not forgot about the blessing that was supposed to be his and the life that Jacob is living in place of Esau. Now, hopefully we're in Genesis 32 now. Did I already tell you that? Is that where you're at? All right. Let's just read all this and we'll go back and go over it. And Jacob went his way, and the angels met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. And he called the name of the place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother, and to the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, thus shall you speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob saith, thus, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now, and I have oxen and asses and flocks and men servants and women servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find grace in his sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we come to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee, and 400 men with him. And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into 2 bands, and said, if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company that is left shall escape. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which saith unto me, return unto thy country and unto thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all your mercies, and of all the truth which thou hast shewed unto thy servant. For with my staff I have passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the children. And thou sayest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother, 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 kine, and 10 bulls, 20 she-donkeys, and 10 foals. And he delivered them into the hand of his servants, every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put space between the droves, and drove. And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, ask thee, saying, who art thou, and whither thou goest, and whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, they be thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent unto my lord Esau, and behold, he is behind us. And so he commanded he the second time, and the third, all that followed in droves, saying, O this manner shall you speak unto Esau when you find him. And ye say, moreover, behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us, for he saith, I will appease him with this present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face, peradventure he will accept of me. So went the president over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. And he rose up in the night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook, and sent over all that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said unto him, What is your name? He said, Jacob. Now something changes right here. And he said, Thy name shall be called no longer Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there. All right, now look at the situation. Ever since he stole the blessing from Esau, he's been blessed beyond measure. It gives the list. Oxen, donkeys, flocks, servants, wives, sons. He's been blessed in every aspect of his life, just like we have. Every single thing in our life has God's hand in it. Everything that we touch, somehow, God has blessed us with. God is in your life. He's moving in your life right now. He wants to put blessings in your life. He has already put blessings in your life. He is a good God. He is good to you. Now, at this point, he's being obedient to God and trying to do God's will. God's the one that told him to go back to this place. He's not just doing it because he has to or because he wants to. God said, go. And he's had, up to this point, the biggest problem in his life removed, which has been Laban, who has hindered him in every single step of his life. He's cheated him. He's done everything that he could do to steal from him. And still, God chose to bless him more than Laban. God has blessed him time and time again. And if you listen to this, you could put yourself right in that place. You could say, God has blessed me time and time and time and time again, even though I didn't deserve it. But Jacob was greatly distressed at this particular point in his life. He was afraid. And as I thought about this, I realized something. Did you know in your life that the presence of blessing does not mean the absence of problems?
Amen.
You are blessed in spite of your problems. You are blessed because God chooses to bless you. But the problems are still there. Now, raise your hand if you are blessed beyond measure, but I've sat up at night worrying about something.
Sure.
I do that often. That's a lack of faith, I guess. I don't know what it is, but we all do that, right? The presence of blessing does not mean the absence of problem in your life. Just like us, blessed beyond measure, sitting up all night and worried to death. Now let me ask you, when you're in that situation, when you are blessed beyond measure, but sitting up at night worried, what do? You sit up and pray? So you worry and pray at the same time?
Try to pray.
When you're blessed beyond measure, but a problem arises in your life, and I mean the type of problem that keeps you up at night, that makes you worry. You say, I can't sleep, I don't know what to do. I'm in this situation, I don't know what to do. What do you do when you're up at night worrying about it?
You overlook your blessings. Forget about it. Can't enjoy it.
You're allowing the devil, don't you worry. Don't ever pray that the devil, Jesus said, that the devil go away, you know, if even for a momentarily, you know, it works, they're cowards, they run.
Okay, all I can speak for is myself. When I get in this kind of shape, when it's keeping me up at night, what I do is I sit there at night and I worry about it all night. Most of the time I don't pray about it. I might say a little prayer that make myself feel better or whatever, but I sit there and I worry until daybreak. I fail to do the things that I know that I should do. I am blessed beyond measure, but I'm worried to death. Has anybody ever been there? I am blessed beyond measure, but I am worried to death. It may be worry over something I can't control.
That's right.
It may be worry over a mess that I've got myself into. I'm my own worst enemy most of the time. But I sit up and worry over things that I should be sitting up and praying about. A lot of the time, the first thing that we do is the first thing that Jacob did. Now look down at chapter 32, verse number 7. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into 2 bands. And he said, if Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. So his messengers have already went and saw Esau, and they came back and reported to him. They said, he's on his way and he's got 400 men with him. Well, that really don't sound like a welcome party, does it? He's probably got good reason in his mind to be worried. He probably thinks that Esau's coming to kill him. And what he does here is he tries to take care of the problem himself. Now listen to how that's worded. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him into flocks and herds and camels, and he said, Jacob said, I'm taking care of this problem myself. If Esau come to the one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. Now, if you think about it, when we sit up at night and worry about these problems, we're trying to come up with a solution, right? There's got to be some way to work through this problem. We're really doing what we were taught to do. Right? I mean, think about it. From childhood up, we are taught if a problem comes up in our life, that we recognize it, that we be responsible, that we figure a solution to the situation, that we take care of it like an adult, that we are independent. And of course, we should act like adults and be adults and take care, be responsible for the things that we're responsible for. But somehow we find ourselves in these messes, don't we? Just like I just told you, I'm my own worst enemy. Right, here's the problem with that. Spiritual problems require spiritual solutions.
That's exactly right.
This right here is not, it looks like a physical problem, but it's really a spiritual problem. This has to do with the blessing. This has to do with the fact that there was a blessing pronounced on somebody from God. See, all this stuff that came into Jacob's life, that didn't come by physical work, although physical work was required. It came into his life because God said, that's yours. I'm going to bless the work of your hands. I'm going to bless the things that I've put into your life. God said that. That's spiritual. But we had to see a physical manifestation of it.
Jacob did the same thing I did most of the time. I created a backup plan that doesn't require faith.
That's exactly right.
That's what I do.
It was coming right out of himself, wasn't it? And that's what,
I try to do it on my own instead of relying on him. Jim tries to fix the problem and I can't fix it.
that's exactly right. That's what I do too. I sit up at night and try to figure. It's the dumbest thing that I do. Just say the dryer tears up in the house and I've got enough money saved up to buy a dryer. I'll sit up and worry because the dryer's tore up. Now that makes a whole lot of sense, don't it? Well, it's because you knew she had enough money saved up to buy a new one.
Well, he was willing to give up half of everything just to keep some.
Yeah.
He's willing to go ahead and give up half.
Yep.
I'll surrender half right now if I can just keep some.
Yep.
Instead of facing the truth. That's the whole thing. He's going to face the truth.
He was willing to accept half, even though God was willing to give him all and more.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So we're taught from childhood up. The problem comes up, we recognize it. We be responsible. We figure the solution, and that's exactly what he was trying to do here. But spiritual things require spiritual solutions. So, in this case, the first thing that he done was not the right thing to do. But then he wised up. Now look at verse 9. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and of my father Isaac, the Lord which saith unto me, Return unto thy country, and unto thy kindred, and I will deal with thee. I am not worthy of the least of these mercies, and of all the truth which thou hast showed me unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother of my children. And thou sayest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered, for multitude. The second thing that he done, the first right thing that he done, let's put it that way, is that he spent time in prayer concerning this problem that he has. Now, up to this point, he hadn't prayed about any of this. The second thing that he done was to reassure himself by reminding God that God is the one that brought him to this land. Now listen to how he does that. First, he acknowledges who he's talking to. He said, O God, the God of my father Abraham and of Isaac, and the Lord which saith unto me, Return unto thy country, to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. The Lord which saith unto me. He's saying, God, you told me to do this. You told me to come back to this country. You're the one that put me in this situation, and I know that you're going to deal well with me. He recognized the fact that he didn't do it. He didn't send himself back there. He said, God, you're the one that put me in this situation. You've blessed me up to this point, and you can bless me after this point. Now, this is after he tried to fix it himself. Then he remembered God's kindness, even just like Jim said, when he didn't deserve it. Verse number 10, I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies and all thy truth, which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I have become two bands. But the first thing he said there is, I am not worthy of all the things that you've done for me and to me in my life. For your truth that you put in my life, for the blessings you poured out in my life. I'm not worthy of any of this. But you still chose to do it. And then, look what he done in verse number 11. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother of my children. He had laid down his pride, didn't he? He said, I'm afraid. So when you're up at night, like you say, wallowing around in the bed, you can't sleep, you're afraid of something. You're afraid of something that's going to happen in the future, or something that's going to happen to your family, or something that's going to happen to you personally. You are eat up with fear. Something has put fear in your life. But what's the opposite of fear? Faith. He had to show some form of faith right here in God, didn't he? So he laid down his pride, and he said, God, I'm afraid. I cannot survive this without you. I'm afraid for my family, and I need your help. He had to put God before everything else. Now, I found it interesting as I read on down here. Turn on over to verse 23. And he took them and sent them over the brook, and he sent over all that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled with him until the breaking of day. I didn't read that right. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. So he ends up in this place. He's desperate, and he sends everything that he has across the river, and he's left on the other side of the river alone. In order for Jacob to see what the solution was that God was getting ready to bring into his life here, he first had to remove both his problems and his blessings from his life. He had to take a brand new perspective of the position that God had put him in. He had to put everything, good and bad, on the other side of the river and say, God, I am here. I need you and nothing else.
It's a good word, Kelly.
And in your life, when you get desperate enough, you have got to take time and just remove yourself from everything that's in your life, every distraction, be it good or bad, and say, God, my focus is on you and on nothing else. I need you in this situation.
Praise the Lord. That's good.
Nothing else would do here. So he sent everything across the brook, and now he's alone. He's alone, and now God can move in his life. We need the problems and the blessings out of our life just so God can put into perspective the very thing that he wants us to see. Now, verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint. And he wrestled with him. As he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go unless thou bless me. Somebody tell me who this man is. Even a guess.
Jesus.
Who has the power to bless?
Jesus.
Verse 26. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let you go, except thou bless me. And he said, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall be called no longer Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God and with men. As I thought about this, I kind of thought back to what Jacob was willing to do for the blessing to start with. He was willing to steal somebody else's blessing. He didn't have the ability to bring about his own blessing in his life, so he had to steal Esau's blessing. But here it is. He's removed everything in his life except his focus on God. And God himself comes down here and chooses to bless Jacob. Now, he's already been blessed. But right here, the man says, I will not let you go unless thou bless me. And he says, What's thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince thou hast power with God and power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. Who did Jacob have to prevail over? Who has been Jacob's biggest problem for his whole life? Himself. That's exactly right. At this point, when the man that he wrestled with changed his name, that means that he prevailed over himself. He had to create this distance so God could work in his life. And then himself, just like I told you, I'm my own worst enemy. I'm my biggest problem. But this man spoke the blessing into Jacob's life that says, now you have power to prevail over your own problems, over the problems you create in your life. Now turn over to 33. We'll wrap it up here. Verse 11. So now he's met Esau. And Esau says, what's all this stuff that you sent ahead? And Jacob says, look at chapter 33, verse 10. And Jacob said, Nay, I pray thee, now if I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. For therefore I have seen thy face, as though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Now listen, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. And he urged him to take it. Now when we start out with all this, Jacob is trying to steal Esau's blessing. But at the end of it all, Jacob is trying to give a blessing back to Esau. This one incident here with God has changed Jacob's whole outlook on his life. From trying to steal Esau's blessing
Good.
to trying to give it back to him. And that's how God can work in our life if we'll allow him to do it.
Amen.
We are blessed beyond measure. You're blessed beyond measure. But problems are going to come up in your life. We're going to have to remove problems and blessings in our life, focus on God, and let him work the way he wants it to work. He turned that completely around, totally opposite from what Jacob was expecting to happen. Alan, you pray for us.
Thank you, Father, for this lesson. Thank you for this day, for all you've done, for all you're going to do. Please continue to be with us. Bless us, Father. Be with Kevin and the rest of